What's up, guys? My name is Wes, and this is Peace Parts. And in this episode, we're putting a fuel system in this bad boy. So, like you just saw there, we got the thing to run on its own, which is super awesome. So what I did for that was I set up my electric fuel pump and a little gas jug on the bumper here, and kind of rigged everything up to be able to test fire it. And the thing ran great. Like, I'm super stoked with how nice it ran. So now what we're going to do is run the actual fuel lines back to the tank. I got to mount the tank, the fuel cell that I have. I got to probably cut the floor out and kind of build them out for the fuel cell to sit. And then we can run all the lines, pump, filter, all the fittings and everything like that. So, should be pretty awesome. So, let's get into it. Okay, so here's where we're starting off. I had the fuel lines hooked up to the injector rail right there, and they just kind of had them snaked around over onto the core support where I had the jug and pump just kind of sitting over here. That way I could connect the pump to the battery and all that kind of sketchy layout. But, so what I did was I kept those lines connected to the fuel rail, and then I just kind of shoved them down here. I'm not going to be able to see it. Yeah, there we go. It's coiled up right there. And so basically I'm going to run 5/16 for the fuel, or for the feed, and then a 1/4 inch line for the return. So the pump will feed it up to the rail here. This regulator will return back to the tank. So I'll have a 1/4 inch return back to the fuel cell. So I have the fuel lines ran to the front leaf spring shackle, and that's where I'm going to put in this kind of setup right here. I've got my really cheap Amazon special $24 electric fuel pump. Didn't come with a mount, so I had to make my own little mount here, just with a piece of aluminum and then an old heater hose, I think. And so I'm just going to wrap down the inside and clamp it around there to bolt this, or like screw it down to the floor. And then in front of it, I've got a fuel filter that's specifically from a 96-ish, that early to mid 90s F-150s. I picked this one because it has the same size of fuel line, and it'll connect just fine, and it's a pretty replaceable part, as well as it being relatively cheap. This one is, I think, a 10 or 12 micron, which means that I'm running it after the pump. This is my outlet of the pump. This is the inlet of the pump, and so I'm running it after the pump and before it runs all the way through the rest of the car, like this being the front of the car over here. And so what this is going to do is going to help protect the fuel injectors and things. If I was running a little bit more high dollar pump, I would probably put another filter in front of the pump, between the pump and where would be the fuel cell, and somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100 micron. That's usually what they say. And so 100 micron means that the mesh is actually larger. A 12, 10 micron, your mesh size is more like that, whereas 100's like that. And so basically 100 micron filters out some of the bigger particles and stuff, and tries to help save your pump from dirt or rust pieces or something getting in there and screwing up the internals. I don't really care too much about this pump. In my opinion, a $24 pump is just as easily replaceable as a $24 filter. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But I do want to try to protect the fuel injectors and fuel rail as much as I can. So I have a little bit tighter mesh filter right here in front of that to protect those things. So basically what I did there, like I said, these are the 5/16 quick fuel lines, quick connects. And so what I did was I actually just took a file and ground that down a little bit so that the 5/16 line can slip over there a little bit easier. And then what I do is I put the clamp on the other side of the bulge there. You can see what has happened right there. Did the same thing on the pump here. I went a little bit farther on the pump to try to make the lines fit a little bit easier. And when I pressure tested it all, it seemed to hold just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and install this in the car. I'm going to put this side onto the line that I just ran coming from the fuel rail, and then I will bolt this up to basically around where the rear seat pan would be. So let's go jump under there and do that. So the next thing I need to do is figure out how to mount the fuel cell back here. I got my line ran to right about over there, and I got the fuel filter and then the fuel pump mounted to the car. I made that little bracket, mounted it up to the car, and so basically I have my lines to there, and then I need to go from there to these fittings on the tank. Now, in a lot of situations, especially like a drag race situation, you'd probably want this at the back of the car. Like this, for instance, you'd probably want them back here. so that when you get on the gas and everything sloshes back, then your fuel is still right here. I don't really want to do that because I don't want my lines like sitting behind there like that, because it's just going to kind of be exposed down there like that. And so this fuel cell also is filled with foam, so I think that should kind of help with keeping the gas from sloshing around. And also, like, it holds a lot of fuel, and so really, if I keep it relatively full, I don't think I should have a problem with mounting it this way. So yeah, I want to mount it this way, and I've been trying to kind of decide on what I want here. I've been sitting here debating it for a little bit now, and so I got some metal square tubing. This is 1 inch. I wanted to find 1 1/4 inch, but I grabbed this because it was available. And so basically what I'm going to do, I couldn't find the exact lengths that I wanted. This is a 4 foot section, I believe. Yeah. And so what I think I'm going to do is have this towards the back, and then I may have to get another one or figure out something different for the front. But I kind of like how this goes all the way across, so I might just leave this full length basically and kind of tack it in place here along the trunk floor plan. But what I think I'm going to do, what I think I've decided to do, is cut along here and over to here and finish this, make this basically a square, and then the fuel cell will sit centered in the car roughly there, and then it'll be sitting kind of on this spare tire. What do you want to call that? The hole for the spare tire. It should be sitting kind of level with that. So that should actually kind of help support it some. And I don't know. I may come back later and cut all that out and make this square flush with here. But I could also just make this flat and put a little cubby or something in there to put. I don't know what. And I also want to have the battery mounted back here. I think I'm going to mount it in this corner. I have a cool little idea that I want to use for the battery shut-off switch. So I'm going to put it in this corner. But I think if my tank is centered, I shouldn't have a problem. And then, so since the lines are up front, that leaves us a pretty short run to go over the differential and right into the fuel pump. And then we'll have our entire feed line setup done. So I think the next step to do is to measure a few times and cut some metal. I'm not very excited about it. But that's what we gotta do. So let's get to it. Okay, so I got my rough hole cut out. It's a little bit more than I wanted to over here, but that's because the original fuel tank strap holder was right in here. So I decided to just go ahead and cut all that out there, that whole assembly out, and it should be fine. So basically my plan of attack for this whole area is that I'm going to place the fuel cell in here. Like I said, is put this bar across the back here. I think I'm just going to go ahead and get another one and put it across the front, and then I'll have two of the same ones located in the front and the back. And then basically my fittings come and sit right here, right in front of the rear end. And then my pump, I can actually see it right there, is going to have a quick little fitting, or a quick little line to go from the feed here over to the pump there. Just like that. So I like the height here. Like I said, it's probably about halfway to this floor, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. I'm gonna have plenty of like visibility through the back. It shouldn't be too big of a deal to fuel this thing up and things like that. Okay, so my next step, I'm gonna go back through here with a flap wheel and clean up all of these sharp edges. Every single cut that I made is a really, really sharp edge. I'm wearing cut-resistant gloves, so they haven't cut me, thankfully. But I don't want to get cut on them in the future. So I'm going to go back through here and clean them up as best as I can. So let's do that. Yeah. Alright, so here's where we're at. Trim this bar down to fit in between the wheel wells. And basically my plan is to probably tack these bars in place just so that they don't move, make sure they're square and everything, tack them in place so they don't move, and then work on building the straps, drill my holes and put some riv nuts in there for the straps to bolt to, and same with the back bar, tack it in place so that I can get the straps made. So, let's work on that. Okay, so I got the bars tacked in there. They're probably literally the worst welds I've ever done. Probably mostly because the surfaces are so dirty. I didn't spend enough time cleaning that spot up there for sure. That whole metal tube was pretty rusty and I didn't clean it up as good as I should have probably. But that's a pretty solid tack. There's at least one solid tack over there, and same with over here. And they're in there pretty securely. So they're good enough for now. Later I can come back and actually burn them in. Hopefully maybe try to clean up a little bit more. I don't know. It'll probably be fine to just leave them how they are and put full welds on them. So next what I'm going to do is throw the tank back in here, and then I'll start laying out the aluminum straps, mark where I want my holes to be, drill some holes, and then throw some riv nuts in there, and then we can bolt the tank down. So, let's work on those straps. So I just tried to bend this up by hand, and you know, this is okay. This didn't work out good. It just had too much length here going down there. So I think bending this by hand is going to be kind of tricky. So I think maybe this means we should do some 3D modeling and some 3D printing. Yeah, let's try that. Something like this. Here's the model, and then we print it out, and there we go. Okay, take number 572 of this. This is the fourth rendition, I think, or revision, whatever you want to say. All the other previous versions didn't work so great, and then I finally realized that I could just make pieces that would bolt onto my vise, and then they could do all the alignment for me. Now that I'm doing this, though, I realize how crappy my vise is, and how much I need to go get another one, but
this works for now. So, yeah, let's just, I'll show you a little test piece here. If I could fix my stupid vise here. Now, the one thing that I'm not liking so far about it is that I don't really have any way to make sure that my part, my metal in here is straight. But it gets the job done. Oh, well. Cool. Well, it'll probably still work without that, honestly. Can't say I'm super surprised. But I was bending it out as I was running it. So that's probably why I did that. Okay, whatever. And I forgot to hit record, but the second half of my second strap is pressed. So, let's pull it out here and see. Oh, no. Maybe help if I go the right way. Little part over here that broke off did kind of break some more, but I was able to kind of pull it around with my hand, and I think it'll be okay. There we go. So, yeah, there's the two sides. There's the one end, and here's my other end. They're not perfectly square, but that's fine. I can fix that, and I can chop this little end off here for what I don't need. But let's go test fit it on the tank and make sure that that works. Here's the part that I made before. It's on truth. This is the part I just made. A little bit of wiggle room, but not too bad. Oops. Okay, so my reasoning behind doing this, cutting this in half, was that I wanted one that had, like, that. Like, just had a little bit more space in between these two bends, because I designed this specifically for that. So, at this point, I've spent several hours trying to print different ones, and remaking it, remodeling it, reprinting it, all that kind of stuff. And I've got my printer going right now with a print that's pretty long, and I don't want to stop it. I don't want to wait any longer. So what I did was I just cut it in half. That way I could utilize this radius, and I could utilize this radius, and I can make straps for different lengths. I like the tank to sit a little bit lower in there, so I'm fine with making different length straps. It's just going to be a little bit more work here to do this, lay it out by hand, basically. And then get my straps formed up for the bottom section, and then we can go back under there, drill some more holes, and continue from there. So, let's do that. Why don't we? Okay, so I have all four of my straps done. I've got two long and two short. The two long will go on the bottom, and the two short ones will go on top. That'll kind of set the tank down a little bit lower. Still need to get bolts, and I need to drill the holes underneath for the riv nuts on the bottom. So I think I'm going to just cut out a little bit more of the floor pan around there to get access to it. This was kind of a little bit of an experiment. This was prototype number one, and I printed it with a really light infill. So you can hear there it's not super strong. I can squish it with my fingers, and I kind of knew that, but I wanted to get a quick print going. This was only like a few hours, and that way I could try it with some narrower piece of stock and see if it would even work and get to the profile that I wanted to. This is kind of just a prototype of prototype, which is, yeah. So I knew that wasn't really going to be the best plan, but once I printed it, I knew that there was several other issues with it, so I needed to have a way to align those two pieces. So I came up with a little slot thing to align in. This one almost kind of worked. It worked good for the narrower stuff to keep it in line, but once I tried to put the 1 inch wide stuff in there, it just didn't want to stay together, and so it started bending this little tab. So I said, okay, well maybe if I fill in here and give it a little bit more area there to hold itself together, and then put some little flanges on the top there so it could sit in the vise, then maybe that'll work a little bit better. And then I did this and was like, well, my vise has holes in there that I could take the plates off and then bolt a piece onto there. Why don't I just make the piece that bolts onto there instead of trying to print supports that keep it aligned? So long story short, that's what I did, and it worked actually really pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how well it worked for like the first couple times. I only printed these in 50% infill, and that's probably due. Well, I did that so that they would print pretty quickly, and so they probably would have lasted a little bit longer if I printed them 100% solid. But I just didn't really want to waste all the time and filament to do that. Of course, I printed it 3 different times. So yeah. So the point is, this was kind of a fun little thing, and really the straps that I'm using are way thicker than I even need. Like, I mean, I could kind of bend them by hand, but it's not very easy. And you know, like, I could have not done all this and just bent them by hand with all the time that I put into trying to make these. It would have been way faster to just do them by hand. But I really wanted to try this opportunity instead, and I've been really kind of itching to use more 3D printing metal forming stuff, and so I thought this was a pretty good opportunity for that. So, long story short, we're ready to use the straps on the tank in the car, other than the last few things I have to do in the car. So, let's jump under there and finish that stuff up so we can bolt this tank in once and for all. Alright, let's do it. Yeah, just like that. And then these guys on top like that. Okay, so I did get the tank fully installed here. I went and got some longer bolts to bolt it down on the top here, and now the tank is really nice and secure. It's kind of hard for you to tell there, I guess, but trust me, it's secure. So now we got to finish running the lines, and let's pop underneath there, and I'll show you what we've got so far. Okay, this is probably going to be really hard to see since I'm laying on the floor here, but bear with me. So I've got the feed line running right here. Yes, it's zip tied to a brake line there, just to kind of keep it up as high as I can. I didn't have a whole lot of room to put another P-clamp there. I put a P-clamp here on this little support right here. I think it's kind of the end of the unibody rail, sort of, but I'm not super happy with it because it does stick the line really, really low, and the factory line kind of tucked around here, so I may address this again, but basically to route it any other way, I'd have to get a little bit longer of a line, or add a union and splice in some extra line, which I don't want to do either of those things really right now, so I'm just going to leave it like that. It'll be fine. The car's not going to be low yet anyway, but but then I run it back along here. I'll probably put another clamp in here somewhere. It's going to kind of just be going through the floor, but something to kind of keep it from just doing that. And then I've got my filter right there. This is the leaf spring on the driver's side here. Got my filter and then my fuel pump. Fuel pump is bolted in right there. And then the lines run back over to there. And let's pop back there. Okay, there's where my fuel pump is. Then the line comes up. I have it secured up there with the clamp kind of next to the shock here. And then there's the outlet of the fuel cell. Now, it is pretty close to the diff right here, which the car is sitting on its weight right now. It's sitting on wheels. So this is about how high it's going to be at ride height until it gets lowered. But I did order a fitting basically to kick this up and kind of run the line up a little bit to kind of help keep it out of the way. But for now, I'm just going to run it basically straight out of here, and then same with the return line. Okay, so I got my lines ran up and connected to the fuel rail. There's the return, and there's the feed right there. And I got the fittings all figured out at the tank. So there we go, we got our feed over on this side, and that's our return over there. Basically, I just, that's a 5/16 fitting with a 1/4 inch line shoved over it. So basically, I just kind of ground it down and then cut in some grooves for the line to attach to, shoved the line way on there really hard, and then clamped it down. And I think it's going to be sturdy enough. So I got the fittings all tightened into the tank there. They are pretty close to the diff. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle, but like I said, I'm just going to try to get like a 45 to kind of kick them up a little bit. I may even just get AN 6 45 adapters. That way I don't have to change either of the lines. And then I'll just kick them both up out and around and out of the way. And tank is all mounted. Again, I'll have to do something with the vent, but I'll probably just leave that alone for now. I don't want it venting into the cab, which is kind of the main reason. So next we got to wire up the fuel pump and maybe just throw it on a switch or something, or have some wires up there so we can test run the thing again, make sure the whole fuel system works. But I'm pretty happy. So let's wire that up. Okay, and last but not least, this is the fuel pump wiring here. I'm probably not even going to run a rear seat, but this is where it would sit. I drilled a little hole there, put a grommet through, the 2 wires plug right into the pump, and then they come up here to my relay, and I just kind of grounded it right here onto the wheel well. Now I've got my power and grounds that are going to run back there. I'm going to put the battery right there, and then I have the yellow wire that runs here, runs along my door sill, and then it's going to go over the dash, and I'll just put a switch right over there. Basically, I just got to send 12 volts to that wire, and then it'll kick the fuel pump on, and yeah, so with all that being said, this video is already plenty long, and I'm sure you guys are tired of watching me, so I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. We now have a full fuel system. In the next video, I'm going to do all the other little things to try to get this thing to drive. I got U-joints to put in, I got a seat bracket to make, a few other little things. I have a throttle cable on there now, and so, yeah, we're getting really close, and stay tuned, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace out.